It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Rams Up, your favorite LA Rams podcast. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network. You can follow us on our YouTube channel as well at LA Rams Up. I'm your host, Mark. I'll be joined occasionally by my football gurus, Paul and Ian. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Rams Up Roundtable number 47. I got Ian and Paul back on board here. What's going on, Paul?
Everything's 5 by 5. Countdown to back to school for us out here. So got 2 more weeks to enjoy some fun and sun.
Yeah, the traffic patterns are going to start changing out here. That's for sure. And I know you're going to have a lot to say. You've been thinking text messaging here, all the different roster configurations the Rams might come away with next Tuesday, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. It's just crazy. We're not that far away from September and game 1 against the Lions. And man, oh man, I'm just excited to finally get football back. Right, gentlemen? Shoot.
Sunday night's going to be electric, I think. It's going to be really good.
It'll be fantastic.
So the first thing we wanted to talk about tonight is the second joint practice with the Cowboys, which included that incident. But let's talk about the word on the street, how these guys did. My understanding is the offense performed pretty well. Is that what you heard, Ian?
Yeah, much better than the first 2 practices, right? The first one against the Chargers was awful. The second time around, or the first time around, with the Cowboys was not very good on offense. Defense was good both previous practices or scrimmages, whatever you want to call it. And this third time going around, second time doing with Dallas since Chargers was on the practice schedule, but because of traffic issues, McVay and Ramsco were like, we're not going down to Orange County, they're going down to the beach area and doing all that. So, made the half-hour trip up to Oxnard where the Cowboys are, so we had that second practice, and it was much better based on all reports. Offensive line was significantly better because, guys, the defense has been pretty good all camp. Now, Cam Curl didn't practice in that second joint scrimmage with the Cowboys, but it was more precautionary. So the defensive secondary was a little kind of up and down in the secondary. Not a shocker when the starter's out. That's been doing really well. But the key is, how is that offensive line doing with 3 backups in? And based on all reports, it was significantly night and day better than the other 2 practices. Lanes were opening up in the run game. Matthew had time to deliver the passes to Robinson, especially, who had a lot of, big touchdowns and big plays in that second joint practice, and much better. And that's what I like to hear, gentlemen, at least from me. Preseason's fun. We're going to talk about all the guys who deserve to be on the roster, who played themselves into the 53-man roster and, hopefully will be there, and guys who played themselves out of it. But the joint practices for me are always going to be on the top of the pyramid of off-season practice and preseason and scrimmage, priorities and news. So it's great to hear that. It's great to hear that Jordan Whittington and Tyler Johnson were rotating in with the first team and getting them acclimated in case, Apuka misses games, or a Cup or a Robinson, right? You need those other guys to step up. So it's good to hear that they were rotating in and doing their job, and there was no, wow, they don't look like they belong. None of that going on. Now, the pass rush. Again, these 2 guys in my background, Jared Verse and Byron Young, were killing the Rams scheme and killing Cowboys offensive tackles. I mean, it was just another day where they were virtually unstoppable in these joint scrimmages. So again, to everybody out there who thinks that the Rams defense is going to be sorry, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Because if they're dominating like this in 3 straight joint practices, and not just these 2 edge rusher guys, the whole defense, when they're all healthy together, outside of Darius Williams, who I think is better than Kobe Durant. I mean, man, oh man, I think we're going to have a real defense. So that's great. And gentlemen, what do you think about the good news? I mean, I'm happy to hear that the practices were much, much better than the first two offensively, and then defense kept up their good play and energy.
How do you feel, Paul? I can only guess.
Well, that's always a positive. Like Ian said, this is like really the only gauge for the Rams because the Rams approach the preseason games in a very different manner.
Yeah.
So for the coaches and for the fans as well, this is really our only gauge. It has been fairly consistent in terms of the outside linebackers playing very, very well, and everything I saw, all the video footage I saw, they were just like flying off the edge, and it got physical. We were talking about that between Tyler Guyton, but that's football. For me, I've been really trying to monitor more of the injuries, and walking away healthy is a big deal. McVay said that, and there are a lot of Ram players coming back healthier than 2 weeks ago. So the team as a whole is definitely on the upswing. But yeah, everything coming out of the Cowboys practice was largely positive.
So, Paul, I'm just going to guess that you have a pretty strong opinion. Maybe I'm wrong about this intern incident. How do you feel about that?
Ridiculous.
And how that went down?
Look, and it wasn't. It was later on in that same practice where there was an issue with Bars, right? Tyler Guyton held Bars and took him down hard, and Bars didn't get hurt, and that's great. But so I think when you have these practices and something like that happens, I think the Cowboys handle it well. But after a certain point, like the coaches also have to gauge that something, it happens. The other team, maybe not in the same mindset that your team is at, and they don't want to work. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, all right, let's call it a day early. It sends a message to the other team too. Like, listen, look, think about that. If Bars got hurt, let's just say he did. Does that change the Rams season?
Of course.
That's the one position where they can't get hurt, right? So of some idiotic play that means virtually nothing. So, we had talked about these. This is our favorite format, right? We said the controlled scrimmages was our favorite format as opposed to the preseason games. But for that to work, both sides of the equation have to be on the same page. So, sometimes that happens. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. That's why I texted it right away. You could see there were like 3 or 4 back-to-back plays where things were going on. Either you call it for 15 minutes and come back, or just call it a day and practice on your own. Because
that's the
how
thing about when that stuff goes down, you really need the bigger picture. There's probably, like you're alluding to, something 2 or 3 minutes before that was occurring. And, the Cowboy defensive lineman blew it. I think he owned up to it. The coaches handled it well. And I think the Ram coaches handled it well. McVay was right there. You want to chime in on it at all, Ian? Or have we...
I get all the fiery stuff, and football is football. Like the play when I thought Verse got hurt, where he got, kind of pancaked, held, truthfully, that would have been a penalty in a real game. Let's just be honest about that. Look at that video where the offensive tackle, picked up Verse, shoulder pad, fingers gripped, and then slammed to the ground where he was holding his shoulder. I was like, oh no, that would have been a hold in a real game. For all the Cowboy fans out there, like, oh, that was a clean block. No, it wasn't. That's a 15-yard penalty, back up. So stuff like that I get in the lines of the football field, right? You hear that term sometimes by players and coaches. Keep it between the lines. But Albert Huggins and that freaking nonsense during the quarterback drill where it's offensive tackles versus D linemen, our offensive linemen versus their defensive linemen, in 101 drills where the D tackle, D lineman, edge rusher, whatever it is trying to get to the fake quarterback, which happened to be one of our coaches, one of our interns. I think it was the equipment intern, if anyone remembers correctly. And that drill was going on for at least a little bit. So for Albert Huggins to not only shove him, it wasn't like an accident, because I debated. I had some Cowboy friends who were like, I don't know. And then they finally agreed with me. Where if you run into somebody because your momentum, totally get it. It happens. Coaches are in the action. We're grown-ass men.
Yeah, they're in the line of fire.
Right? I get it. But in that video, if anyone hasn't seen it, please go watch that real quick and find it. I'm sure you'll be able to find it pretty fast. When Huggins goes and you see full arm extension, boom, look down at him, look back up at the Rams own lineman and give him the middle finger. Nah, man, screw that crap. That's not keeping it in between the lines. That's not, I just lost my cool. Nah, man, that's premeditated. That was thought out. Even if it's thought out in the instant, get your hands off my damn coaches, Albert Huggins. Pathetic. That pissed me off, truthfully, to see that type of crap. Because, look at, man, at the end of the day, I get it. Football is aggressive. It's intense. It's fiery. You're not thinking. Sometimes you black out and you're just reading, reacting. But to the point where you shove him, let's just say you did shove him by accident. And it was like, oh, no help up. No, oh, damn, I screwed up. Are you okay? Shove, look at the Rams O-line, middle finger, and then went to square up. That's a bunch of
Oh,
BS.
I didn't catch that. Was that a middle finger? See, I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
Bunch of BS.
And that does change it a little bit.
I love that Sean McVay saw that whole thing. If you listen to the clip, you can hear him, hey, what the F is it? And just going off. Rams coach shoved that Albert Huggins D tackle, and then he got escorted out of the practice, and he was done for the day. Now, look, I don't know about his football status and his journey. He is a journeyman D tackle, but it's no shock that the Cowboys made a trade for another D tackle that same day. So I assume his NFL career is in serious jeopardy. But in the flip side of it, I'm glad our people stood up for him. A brawl would have been okay with me. We don't want our Rams players fighting, but that's a worthy situation where a fight wouldn't be opposed on my end. But I'm glad that they stood up. I'm glad that guy's out of there. And that was a bunch of BS by typical Dallas Cowboys football player. Shocker.
And
so
the larger context of this and why Ram Nation, this conversation is important is this. So why are these practices so important to the Rams and other teams, right? As we saw, right, Mark, Ian, we had a couple of roundtables ago. We talked about Rams have the most, right? I think the Cowboys were a second, are they not? I think they're number 2 or on that little same list, right? A number of practices.
That sounds right.
Right. So what is the whole purpose of these practices and why are they important? To minimize injuries, right? Get your work in and minimize injuries, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we're having this conversation. If the mindset going into this type of activity has to be, we're doing this for this reason. We're trying to minimize injuries. We want to get our works in and get our reps in, right? And we understand that football is controlled violence. That's all it is. Anybody who thinks differently, wrong sport, right? Yeah. It is controlled violence. That is the issue. That if going into that practice within the first 15 minutes, and this is at every level, you can ask anybody. It's within 15 minutes of a practice, if people came to work or not. It's that simple.
Sure.
If the mindset is not there, you've already negated the purpose of that activity, right? And if you look at what McVay did, right, as soon as he saw what happened, he called the whole team to the sideline. He spoke to them, right? Then everybody took a little bit of break, and then they went back out there. And so it was handled perfectly, the way it should be handled. The whole point of this is that in these practices, right, if you encounter a scenario where things are not meshing, and we're not saying it should have happened, so we're just sort of like bouncing ideas, right? That if as these number of practices are probably going to increase next year as well, they're probably going to go up, right? We're going to say it's probably increased by 1 or 2 right across the board. So, you have to be cognizant of that. We saw it, and it was no surprise that within 15 or 20 minutes, Bars almost got hurt, right? On just a needless play. And I watched that whole sequence of plays before that, right? Three or 4 plays before that, guy did a great job. Blocked Bars, got him on the ground, and he's flexing over him. I'm like, so this happens 3 plays later. You cannot tell me that's not connected. This is the type of stupidity in the NFL that players have to be cognizant of. We're talking, Higbee's on the PUP list because of a stupid play, a dirty play. They should not have happened. And players have to understand, you got to be able to, we understand it's controlled violence, but you have to be able to sort of keep it in the holster, understand how to execute what you need to do, but at the same time, you have to be able to draw that line too. There's just some things that are just silly and nonsensical, and you can just see it.
On the brighter side, the lighter side, if that intern goes on to be a shoe salesman,
Right.
he's going to have a great memory. Yeah. But
Sure.
hey, so let's talk about that Rams Chargers game. Unfortunately, well, not really unfortunately, but it's a good problem to have. I thought two of the standouts were both inside linebackers, Hummel and Spates again, and Neal. Yeah. And it's a good problem to have. But we've been talking about offline about the different roster decisions the Rams are going to have to make. And inside linebacker, man, what do you do? What would you do, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And truthfully, the entire defense has been pretty dang good through these two games. That on film, I don't see a lot of, just like the first game against Dallas, I don't see a lot of confusion going on. Guys know what their responsibility is. Is there a moment where they're kind of like, uh-oh? Of course, because you're just keeping your head on a swivel and you're just hoping everybody's in sync. But you're not seeing a ton of that. You're seeing players be on the same page, play fast, play angry, controlled violence, right, Paul? Right? Laying the boom, but not being dirty about it. And it's good. So at inside linebacker, no different than the entire defense. And look, Omar Speights deserves a roster spot. There's just no doubt about it. It's 2 games in a row now where he's played pretty good. But this game, he even took it up another notch. Play recognition, speed to the ball, recognizing coverages and what his responsibility is on a fly, aggressive. Everything you want out of an inside linebacker, you saw in the second game. And gosh, I know we have, Roseboom and Ernest as the starters, but if Ernest can't go, let's just say he has another knee flare-up, which is highly likely. Let's just be real about it. I wouldn't feel so bad having Omar in. Let's say Roseboom has something going on. I wouldn't feel so bad having Omar Speights in there based off what I've saw. Now, again, it is against backups, but like I always say, how are you doing? Are you standing out in a good way or are you standing out in a bad way? In that inside linebacker position, Omar Speights is standing out in a fantastic way through his 2 chances as an undrafted player.
And he's made some special teams plays too.
Oh, that too. He had an opening kick. Yeah. He had a really good tackle out in space, right?
Yeah.
And hey, all you can ask for is stand out. You deserve a spot. Man, he's standing out so far. I mean, real quick, Paul, Mark, you might know this. Just speaking of Omar, did he have a hip injury or was it a lower leg injury that was kind of troubling during the draft process? I remember we talked about it a while back. I don't remember exactly, but isn't that possibly the reason why he went undrafted instead of maybe being drafted at all? Was there some hip or lower leg injury I'm just not remembering, or am I making that up in my own brain?
I don't recall that. I'll have to lean on our draft guru, Paul. Yeah. Do you recall that?
I mean, he was nicked up, but I think it was more a matter of he had transferred to LSU. He didn't have a great year at LSU. But yeah, he did. I think he did have 1 or 2 injuries during the season that maybe might have. But he was considered to be a lower round, possible UDFA type of player. But as we see, I mean, the kid is a dog, and McVay loves him. McVay at his most recent press conference says he said he is a grown man, right?
Yeah.
He makes his presence felt on game day, and because of the EJ situation, that's why Reader's there. Reader's there as an insurance policy, right? So I think that so they're 3. Boom. The question is who's going to be there for that. And we were talking about, listen, to Jake Hummel's credit, I mean, he's been all over the field. He's been flying around all over the place. He's been with the Rams for 2 years. We know the Rams sort of lean towards familiarity, right?
Sure.
And this is the issue with preseason, right? So you're watching these players against 2s and 3s, not 1s, and that's the issue. Yeah. And that's always going to be the issue. So you have to trust your position coach, right? You have to trust the eyeball test. And Big O, I mean, the kid shows up, he flies around, and he contributes on special teams. So the question is going to be, right? Do you put him on the practice squad, right, and see what happens? I think if you put him on the practice squad, I think somebody grabs him right away.
No, he's getting poached, Paul. I agree with you. There's no way.
Yeah,
he won't stay a practice squad guy. Yeah.
The issue then is, will Jake Hummel Do you think anybody's going to go after Jake Hummel? Probably not. You got a better chance of keeping Hummel. And that kid Neal, I'm telling you, this kid Neal, we're going to hear about him next year, if not this year. That kid is a natural.
Yeah, what would upset you? What would upset you more, the Seahawks picking up Hummel or Spates? And I think it's an easy answer. Let me be. Let me throw out a crazy idea. And I mentioned this on the pod. I don't know if you guys caught it. So Troy Reeder, there's no reason to play him because they know exactly what they have in Troy Reeder.
Sure.
Could they possibly cut Reeder and keep Spates and Hummel?
It's not impossible, but hey. I mean, if you're not playing in preseason action, then you kind of have a roster spot secure. Let's just be real. That's how we roll. Other teams do it differently, but if you are not playing and you're in street clothes for multiple games in a row of preseason action, either you're injured or you're making a team. And to my knowledge, there is no Troy Reeder injury.
I love Troy Reeder for a few reasons, but I don't know. He just doesn't excite me as a, if he's coming in.
Troy Reeder gets no love, Ram Nation. Look at this. Troy Reeder gets no love.
I'm just being real here.
It is true, though.
He's a Super Bowl caliber linebacker, right? Inside linebacker. I know. I say that.
Familiarity, and that's exactly right. So familiarity, number one. Number two, he has been able to get it done in the past, right? So put those two things together. And here's the other thing, number three. So EJ goes out. If there has been one thing in the preseason that has stood out, teams have been able to run the ball up the middle against the Rams. Think about that. Everybody's seeing that. Everybody's watching that, right? They know that. Right. And everybody knows Bobby Brown is a big question mark in the middle. So the Achilles heel of the Rams is going to be right up the middle. And who would have thought that we would ever be having this conversation about inside linebackers and Rams in the same breath, right? Having too many inside linebackers.
I know.
Reeder is the more of the three. If you want to talk about run stopper, Troy Reeder would fit that mold a little bit more than the other two. Sure. Although Omar Spates, no question, is a physical player, right? I would definitely not call him the classic thumper run stopper type.
No.
Right?
I bet you. Go ahead. I was just going to say,
if you said that in that equation, which is why I think Troy Reeder is going to stick around.
Not that it matters, but I have a feeling if you were to poll Ram fans, which one to get rid of, I have a feeling it might be Reeder, and I know that doesn't count for much. But do you disagree? Do you think I think the Ram fans would definitely want Spates? I mean, if they've been paying a little bit of attention, and maybe fans that don't have the football knowledge you two do, and I think Hummel has a little bit more excitement about Hummel as opposed to Reeder.
Well, also, but think about this way too: is kickoff coverage and ST units this year are going to be more important than last year, right? So what they did last year, I don't think they can get away with this year for that reason. Yeah. Spates has shown he will play on special teams and he will make play on special teams. Yeah. That might tip it in his favor. The other thing, Hummel's the kind of guy that's always going to be around. I don't think, he's not the type of player that I think, not that he's not a quality player. I think people do not realize if you watch Jake Hummel play in pass coverage, Jake Hummel knows how to play in the NFL when it comes to pass coverage. No question about it, right? The other aspects of his game are marginal, right? So I don't know if Jake Hummel being removed from the 53 means he's necessarily being removed from the organization at large. That's my whole point. Whereas if you went in the other direction, Omar Spates, he's gone.
So
NFL personnel evaluators, they already know him. Yeah. He's gone.
So, Paul, who else stood out in the Chargers game for you?
I love the Rams corners. I thought the corners played really, really well. Those young corners look like they belong. We've been talking about it. I think McCullough has carved out a spot as the backup star. I think he's big. He's physical. He knows how to make plays, right? There was a reason he was playing safety. I think a lot of people are surprised how big he is. In terms of his stature and his size. So he's a big defensive back. So he brings a lot of versatility to that whole room. I also think, although he's been quiet, I think Wallace has played well. And Xavier Woods to me has really stood out. That blitz, that pick that tip pass, it was
Yeah.
Xavier Woods coming off the edge.
It was.
So the Rams have a lot of these young corners that look like they were, listen, they have bought into it. Make plays. Aubrey Pleasant's yelling it from the sideline, right? They want them to make plays. And from what I overheard, apparently now they're going to do the whole turnover chain. If you get a turnover, if you get a pick.
Are they really?
Right?
I know that's been kind of like joked
Yeah.
like by people on TV and whatnot. And
I hope they were joking. I hope they were joking about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows,
dude?
dude?
Paul, I think you meant Charles Woods. But that's
fine.
fine.
Right, Charles Woods. Xavier Woods is a different player I was thinking about.
And we could talk about Xavier Smith too. Ian, you got anybody that stood out for you in the game?
Yeah, I mean, guys, how can you not make a great case for Xavier Smith making this roster? So look at it right now. The receiver position, what Xavier Smith is. We have the no-brainers based on who is not playing. Nakua, Kupp, Robinson, Tutu are the top four. Whittington had another fantastic game where he looks like he belongs. He's a lock. Duh. Then you have Tyler Johnson, who I think should be a lock as well based on his plays that he's made in practice, joint practice, and how little he plays in these preseason games. I think he's a lock. Now, the Rams run 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers out of the most out of any team in the entire NFL by a wide margin, by like 10% more than the next team. So based off that, people getting hurt, it happens. It's happened to us many a time since McVay's been the coach. I think you got to carry 7, at least to just cover your grounds. And that 7 spot, to me, belongs to Xavier Smith. Not only is he fast, he has 4.4 level speed, but guys, the return ability now with the new kickoff, obviously punt, we need somebody to return punts other than Cooper Kupp, fair catching it all the time. So we have somebody reliable with hands. That's always been annoying to see for his safety. And then just because it's a dead play, right? Not only is Xavier Smith wearing 19, it kind of reminds me of a Brandon Powell type of guy, right? Smaller in stature, fast, quick once he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, I think he should make this roster to be that 7th receiver, obviously, but then to be a factor on punt returns and possible kick returns. He has to. He had 2 good returns. When he's open, he looks speedy, quick. I think he has to make this roster too, right, gentlemen? Am I wrong for thinking that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It comes down to that numbers game. Like, Paul was throwing out those numbers, 2 or 3 quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks, 5 edge rushers, 9 offensive linemen. I'm not saying these are the numbers, but these are the numbers that we have to think about.
I know.
Defensive line is at 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's going to be one position group that gets dinged a little bit if we carry 7 wide receivers. But you're right, Xavier Smith. And I got it. I don't usually do this. I'm the last one of us to throw shade on players, but Tutu Atwell, I don't think it would be a big loss to this offense if we were find a way to move him along somewhere.
It's on the table. I mean, he'll get Van Jefferson if he screws up like Van did this last season.
Yeah,
I don't mean that in
the VJ treatment. He's gonna get the VJ treatment by game 3. Yep.
I mean, hopefully not, because Tutu I think he is a good wide receiver if he gets thrown to. I really do.
Yeah.
The film when he gets thrown to, he catches everything. He's a way better receiver than Tavon Austin ever was, and everyone's in love with Tavon in the Rams, Rams sphere of fandom. He's a fast dude, but he couldn't do jack tiddly squat other than a jet sweep every now and then. Let's just keep it real. Tutu's a way, way better receiver than, Tavon or guys in that mold. So he has value on this team. I'll fight tooth and nail on that. Now, again, if he blows it in the games in that first one of the season, drops passes, whatever negatively impacts his team, he will be gone. There's no doubt about it. But based on him not playing, he's going to make this team. But I think we got to keep 7 just based on the history of Nakua in college. He's got a banged up knee now.
That's true.
Kupp's professional history of injuries. Obviously, D-Rob's been pretty healthy, but, we got to have as many receivers as possible because in the Rams history, Nakua's college history, a lot of injuries between the top 2 dogs, Kupp and Nakua. So I think the more guys you have there, the better. And the return ability from Xavier is incredibly, incredibly valuable for a team whose special teams was one of the worst in league history the last 25 years last season. So he deserves a spot. I think we got to keep 7.
Yeah, Paul's predicting a Jimmy G to Tutu Atwell touchdown to win the Super Bowl. I think. Are you on record for that, Paul? I thought you were.
Definitely not.
So, hey, let's talk about injuries. I didn't even know. I noted in my post game pod that Jerry Jacobs didn't play, did not have a reason. I think there were three guys that you thought might have played that didn't. Dresser Wynn, Jerry Jacobs, and there was someone else. So he's been released. Is that the case, Ian?
Yeah, cornerback Jerry Jacobs. Everyone was like, "Oh, what great familiarity with Aubrey Pleasant from the Aubrey Pleasant." Who, by the way, shout out to his first win
Oh
as his
yeah,
head coach
yeah.
in debut. That was really fun, and everybody enjoyed that. So everyone thought that Jacobs signing would be like, "Hey, it's a great pairing back with Coach Pleasant in the DB room, and it'll fit seamlessly." Hey, he's got a lot of starts in his time with Detroit. Was it perfect? No, but his last best season was his past season as a pro. But he didn't do Jack Tilley's squat, whether it was because of play, because of injury, whether he was just injured. And when you sign somebody that quick, when another corner injured himself, it's like, hey, guys, we're just short on bodies. We can't keep you around. So there was an injury settlement with his release. And that's unfortunate for him because, he probably would have made this team and got some, decent cash for his personal life for being on this team. So, I expect another corner signing to happen within the next 2 weeks, whether it's immediately this week, whether it's next week when roster cuts are made, which was probably going to be the case. It's unfortunate because I know a lot of the fans are like, all right, cool. Like, we feel good about that depth, but, the NFL is not for long. And if things don't go your way, you will be out of here pretty fast, unfortunately.
Well, fortunately, this is a group, these defensive backs, cornerbacks that Paul really likes. A lot of young guys, though, right?
Yeah.
And do we have an update on? Does anyone have an update on Darius Williams?
Well, if I had to go out on a limb, I'm going to say Darius Williams is on his way back. Because they're cutting Jerry Jacobs loose, Darius Williams is on his way back. You got week one right around the corner, right? So they're not going to roll the dice like that unless they have a pretty good feel for that. I agree. I also think they're going to bring somebody else on. I think they're going to bring another corner on. Yeah. I think if you take a look at the Ram cornerback situation, it's not as bleak once Darius Williams gets back. It's actually fairly positive, right? Jolly has played well. Jolly has been rock solid out there. You watch him, you really scrutinize his play, man. He's playing, he's got his head in the game, good leverage, right? He's not giving up big plays. So he's playing confident. So, when you start talking, depth, that's what you want to see. You want guys that are consistent and not going to get beat. And that's what you want. You don't have to be an all pro, but do not, blow the game. And that's sort of the scenario when you start talking about who's the number 5, number 6 defensive back on the squad, and it's a unique scenario too. Like, people forget, Lake, you got to talk about him as if he's a corner. He's playing the star. It's a unique scenario. And what really adds to the mix is the safety scenario. The Rams are deep at safety, so much so, right? That really, so Mark, we were playing around with the numbers. Normally you could say, all right, we'll carry one fewer. Can you really say that now? No, you really can't. Kitchens is going to be there. There's just no way around it. The kid's going to be there. The question now is going to be, rush East, right? What's going to happen with the East?
Yeah.
Jason Taylor, limited play, but the kid looks good, and the kid's been on the roster before. So you have these scenarios coming up. The bottom line is the players, if they did not stand out, then they automatically go. If they're at 1A versus 1B, they go to 1B. It's that simple.
That's right.
That's just the way it is.
Ian, what's the word on the street about Jonah Jackson? I heard that he was warming up this morning.
Individual drills. So, that bruised shoulder, that, bruised bone, shoulder blade is healing solid. That's great news because, man, oh, man, that dude is injury prone. And that was the hazard with signing him. And look, it was better back then than it is this week going forward for him to injure that. And, we'll just hold our breath the whole season with him. That's just the reality of his, his unfortunate history of playing time and injuries in the NFL. So great news. He is needed for us to have any chance of competing for a Super Bowl. No doubt about it. great to hear that he's progressing. Also great that Stafford had a full practice today and there was nothing wrong. Because I know a lot of the media are like, oh my God, Rams are in trouble, Stafford. And look, if Stafford's severely injured, like a bruised spine or an elbow, which hinders his throwing, or a thumb that is torn where he can't grip a football, he's going to play through a lot of things. And that's just the type of Iron Man that he is. So, hey, he's going to be all right. He's going to play week 1, everybody. His hamstring's okay. And again, Sean McVay said that Stafford was pissy at him since he got yanked out of the second Cowboys joint practice. Not because he was injured, just because he wanted to go back in. And we all know Stafford would go back in and finish a game if he felt a little something in his hammy. He would. He would, and he would still have that superstar arm to throw any laser beam on the field. It would be no issue. So at this point in the offseason, preseason leading up to game 1, I get the coaching staff being hesitant and holding players out. So great to hear that he's fine. Great to hear that Jonah Jackson's progressing. Great to hear that Darius Williams is progressing. And then so are the other guys that we all are hoping are
positive report came back on Alaric Jackson too, that he's
Yeah.
making progress. So, hopefully these players are back for week 1.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
you know,
guys, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know you guys, if I'm reading between the lines on the text we share, I've never felt better about the depth on our offensive line. It's the first time in years I felt this good about it. And I know they're playing against second stringers, but Bo Limmer getting really good grades. Logan Bress looks like he might be actually better than mediocre. Warren McClendon. Yeah, Warren McClendon. And then I'm leaving somebody out. There's someone else. I think Zach Thomas has played well. And Noteboom, there's Joseph Noteboom. I think we're all comfortable with him.
Yeah.
So I feel good about our offensive line if we, the 8, 9, 10 guys that we carry.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, Mark, today at practice, Bo Limmer was getting first team reps at center, and then they kicked Steve Avila back to guard. I get it. Practice the emergency situation. We had talked about that. What do you do if the guard situation is just abysmal, right? You make Steve Avila go back and you get Bo Limmer to play center. And that's, you got to have the best 5, or it doesn't matter how good Steve Avila is at center if the 2 guards can't get it done. So if you have a serviceable center and you have, a good guard like Steve Avila proved as a rookie last season, and that's what you got to do. So the Rams are practicing that scenario, which, hey, you gotta, because I know Sean McVay doesn't want to relive a 2022 campaign where we have a new offensive lineman starting almost every game of the entire season, which was insane. So
yeah, I saw a couple of clips I saw a couple of clips and Limmer looked like a beast. Very limited, views, but looked like he was doing really well. And Logan Bress laid a couple of people out.
That's what happens when you draft from the SEC. That's what happens.
I know. And of course, we get the one Wisconsin lineman who doesn't work out immediately. It's like, geez Louise. But and all jokes aside with Logan Bress, everybody, it is good to see he's making progress because, again, that first preseason action we saw him as a rookie, it was so dreadful. I'm sorry. Again, remember, we always talk about, do you stand out in a good way or do you stand out in a bad way? And that was standing out in a bad way to the max when his first action as a Ram a couple seasons ago was happening during that disaster lineman season. That just didn't stop from his injury onward. So it's good to see that he looks like he's, an NFL player now. And, hey, he was still a 3rd-round pick. He was still drafted to start. So is he living up to expectations still? No, based on what he did at Wisconsin. And based on
and we have
people jumping into the pool for his draft pick.
Logan Bress, 3rd-round pick. Yeah.
So look at this is year 3 going for his season, right? 2022 was his rookie. 23, he wasn't on the team, practice squad. This year, he'll probably make the team, which is good. But by next season, he has to be a legit, should he start level player for this thing to be working out? Or I don't see him coming back to this team after his rookie deal done next season. But again, let's not jump too far ahead. Glad to see the progress. We'll see how it goes. If he plays this next week or not, I assume he will just play based on the numbers of how many linemen are available. Maybe not. But if he doesn't play, he's probably going to make the team. If he does play, still a coin flip. But if I had to lean where it's going to go, I think he'll finally have a true roster spot where he'll get a full, offensive lineman pay other than the injury pay that he got rookie year and then the practice squad pay that he got last year.
And then you have Arcuri too. So he has shown that he's.
Are you related to AJ or Curry?
Not at all, but you got to respect the progression, man.
I'm just
I still
teasing
remember
you.
when he came over from Michigan State. Yeah. So
Yeah, there's two guys I always forget, and that's Sean Jolly and AJ Curry. I don't know why. I just always forget about them, and you always remind me about them. So
because he wears 61. You remember
yeah.
Newton when he played for the Rams, he wore
Yeah.
61. So I'm always like, Curry, you got to change that number, dude. You're a tackle, man. But I could see a Curry if he had to play guard. I'm telling you, that kid can knock some heads, man. That kid is, when you watch him play, he's just that classic blue collar lunch pail guy that before you know it, he's like, holy cow, he's making plays, right? So, I mean, it's almost like the situation we're talking about inside linebacker, right? Just guys just stepping up, improving their game from year to year, benefiting from being on the practice squad, from being on the team, from excellent coaching and an excellent work ethic. Put all those factors together, this is what you get.
Hey, I was watching the Charger broadcast. It was only one that was available where I am for whatever reason. And they were really excited about Zach Evans. Did he change either of your opinions on? I know going in, you guys weren't real excited about him.
Just a head shake no, and look at it. It's unfortunate, but there's just no way he can make this team.
Oh no, yeah, I don't think he can either.
Based on how Boston Scott looked too in the same game, right? And look, there were some good chunk runs by Zach Evans. There were, and there's no doubt about it. He didn't. It was much better than last week's game against the Cowboys. But Boston Scott is doing more with less, better vision, obviously running with more power than Evans. And then Boston has also the very valuable return ability, just like Xavier Smith, which will get him to be that fourth and final running back, just like Xavier Smith will probably be that seventh and final receiver. Because, guys, I mean, we've seen Boston Scott return kicks and punts at this time with the Eagles and look really good. There's no way the Rams don't see that and don't be like, hey, that's valuable. We need guys like that in this new kickoff format, and then a punt return capability. So good for Zach for having a better game. I assume he's going to play a majority of this next game against Houston coming up. And hopefully he puts out some good tape because I feel like he will not be on this team based on Kyron not playing, Blake Corum being a rookie and not playing at all. Boston, Ronnie Rivers not playing. Remember that too. And then Boston Scott just looking better overall with the return, abilities in the back pocket as well.
He might have earned a spot on the practice squad with that performance. So we'll need at least one running back on that unit, I guess.
Yeah. It feels that way.
Is there anybody else we need to talk about from this Chargers game? I know just in passing, we don't need to talk about it, but I was really disappointed with Ethan Evans. I think he only had 2 punts, but I was expecting that dude should be just pounding it, and he isn't.
Davis Allen and his lack of physicality and continued lack. I'm a big Davis Allen fan. I think offensively, the kid, he's going to be if he used properly, he's going to be the type of tight end. But he's looking more and more like he's going to wind up like Bryson Hopkins, right? He's not going to get an opportunity because if he can't block, they're not going to put you out there. That's the bottom line.
It's true,
right? And every time you watch him in the blocking game, it's just like he's getting knocked around. And, and sort of surprising because, when you look at his profile, he sort of has a different type of mentality. You don't expect that from him. So maybe it's he just doesn't want to get hurt. He's trying to keep himself healthy, get ready for the regular season. That could be it too.
Yeah.
He knows he's got a spot on the team. There's no question about it. So that might be it. But, that's one area that he's going to have to really step up. But offensively, I mean, you saw some of the catches. I mean, this kid's got hands like glue, and he's got size that, just lasts for days.
For sure. So, I mean, I think you could say the same thing about Hunter Long as well. I haven't been impressed with him at all either, truthfully. So the tight end situation is kind of, but I expect Davis Allen to be ready to rock. We've seen him be in big games this last season as a rookie and have some good moments. So, hey, it's one of those games for him. I won't carry too heavy with that. But if we're going negatives, I mean, guys, look at it. I'm going to be just short and sweet about it. Stetson Bennett cannot be our backup quarterback. Was it much better than last week? 4 interceptions, but should have probably been more in this game again, right? There definitely were some bad throws where they were open and it was behind or it was too low. And, if Sean McVay really and the staff really think that Stetson is going to be the answer come weeks 1 and 2, they're crazy. And I don't have the brain Sean McVay does about NFL football or offense and all that. But I think if we can all see it, and I think if the average football, viewer can see, like, this guy, he can't be the backup quarterback to a Super Bowl contending team or a Super Bowl hopeful team, however you want to spin that. There's just no way. And again, if Stetson Bennett lights it up this upcoming week against Houston, then maybe things get better, and that maybe sways, the weight in his favor to make the team and be the backup weeks 1 and 2 with Garoppolo suspended. But the film don't lie. Missed throws, bad interception, should have been more. I like the deep throw to the lap. That was cool. You see
that was the arm strength we were looking for, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that was really, really shocking from the beginning of the preseason, right? We had commented back and forth on, like, wait a minute, like, he's not even stepping into his throws. And to see that throw, if you watch that throw, that is a great throw.
Yeah, it was 55 yards on the money. I mean,
and it was cutting through the air like a guided missile, right?
Yeah.
So that's the arm strength that we're looking for, and him, not just being able to sort of throw these, like, these darts, but you got to be able to throw those intermediate passes with touch. You got to be able to throw those timing passes in those windows. And, he's shown he can do that at the collegiate level. He's shown he can do it on the move. That we've seen, right? There's no question about it. When he's been his best is when he's been on the move. But that one throw shows he's got the potential to be a good pocket passer. So Stafford, I think it's interesting. Stafford, many, because I'm older, like, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? So I remember when Stafford got drafted. I remember when Stafford was at Georgia, right? He was a very athletic quarterback, right? And the question was, could he be a great pocket passer? Same thing with this kid coming out Beck, right? They're saying this, all these Georgia quarterbacks, they always say that about them. So that's the things. Right now, you're at 100% spot on. According to the progression, he's not there yet, right? We are seeing the flashes. But you got to be fair to this kid. Do not put him in that scenario, right? Obviously, we're hoping that nothing happens in week 1 and 2, but you cannot roll the dice like that, because taking an L just because you don't have a backup quarterback in place is just as bad as what they did to the team last year.
Well, what's the alternative? What's the backup plan?
I don't get the millions of dollars to sign Jimmy Garoppolo, knowing that he was going to be suspended for 2 games, and then now have to figure out who the backup quarterback is. That's for the guys, the brain trust that get trillions of dollars, right? That, they have to figure that out. That's their mistake. They put themselves in this situation, right? It's a great coaching staff. It's a great front office, but this is a bonehead move that they pulled.
Yeah.
And we said it the minute, within 48 hours of Garoppolo being signed, we said the karma is going to come back. We said that. You can watch the tape of the roundtable. That it came from all of us. The karma is going to come back, and here it is, week 1. Here it is. Hopefully, nothing's going to come of it. Hopefully, everything will be fine. They'll pick up a quarterback for 2 weeks and whatever, right? That's a smart play, right?
So
and you roll with it. But you can't put this kid in that situation. He's going to get the team, and the team. It's not fair to the team either.
Can we pay Ryan Tannehill by the hour? Bring him in.
That'd be great. I mean, he's a starting level quarterback. I would rather have him over Garoppolo as our backup, honestly. So, I mean, to your point, what is the solution, Mark? I mean, whatever after roster cuts, that's the only way to do it. That's the only way, because Stetson needs valuable time just playing football, and that seems practice squad to me all the way, where he can play against superior defenses, obviously the ones, and then just get a feel for that and what it takes to, just play better football at the quarterback position, what is needed for him and where he's at. Again, we see the arm, we see all that stuff. No different than every other preseason game he's played in. But guys, to have, 6 turnovers in 2 preseason games, if we're counting that fumble where he scrambled and that ball came out like butter off a knife, easy pop out. That, and if we're counting even his last football appearances from last preseason, there's just no way he can be our backup. And Coach McVay and everybody, if you make him our backup, I think you guys are crazy. It's just straight up.
And I hate to rewrite history or to, hindsight's 2020, but Aiden O'Connell was there on the draft board.
Much better.
Yeah.
At least we don't have to worry about the turnovers. That right?
Yeah.
Take care of the football and then make some throws when they're there. That's all we're asking for.
Yeah.
Purdue always has every now and then a quarterback that could play, and it seems like I know he didn't win the job over Minshew, which Minshew's way more talented. Shocker.
I saw him play at some point last year. And did the Rams play the Raiders in the preseason? Perhaps I saw him play somewhere, and I was like,
yeah,
this guy,
he
looks NFL ready. Yeah, he looks NFL ready.
Quarterbacks available by next week. They'll be.
So I mean, look, there's Bailey Zappi. He's probably not going to beat. I'd rather have Zappi. We've seen him quarterback teams.
Oh, right.
I mean, I assume he's probably going to get axed out in New England. I could be wrong, but it feels that way. There's guys out there I just can't think of right now. I'd rather have a lot of those dudes that won't be on rosters for whatever reason.
Hey, Colt McCoy for 2 games. He just retired. I always liked him. He did some damage to the Rams, if I remember correctly, coming off the bench for somebody. Was it the Cowboys? Well, I forget who it was.
Yeah, it's time of the Cardinals where
that's who it was.
Yeah, in that 2022 disaster year, they came in and they kicked our ass. That was a bad game. We just didn't play it well. I remember that. But I mean, hey, we'll see what happens. And I mean, shoot, dude. It's just, I'm sorry, everybody, for all the Stetson fans out there. I get it. He had a lot of good stuff at Georgia. And can we just stop all that dumb talk about, the heir to Stafford? It's done. It's been done for a year plus now. It's never going to happen. And if it does, we live in a crazy timeline of football, Rams football. And I wish him well to get better as a football player. But I'm unimpressed in 2 weeks of game action. It just can't happen.
Hey, we'll close this out with some roster talk. Position groups maybe we haven't talked about yet. I think we touched on most of them actually. But before we get to that, Tom Brady and Colin Cowherd. And Colin Cowherd, as every time I've heard him talk about the Rams, he talks about them in a very he loves the Rams. I think he has always loved the Rams and Sean McVay.
Good.
But there's
a lot to love.
Yeah, and it was cool to see Tom Brady, who was at the Rams Chargers game, by the way. I think I saw him on the sideline, right?
He was talking to Whit.
Right. And you guys probably heard it on the Stephen A. Smith show, was it? He said the biggest threats to the Chiefs as far as the next Super Bowl champion would be, the 49ers and the Packers. And then almost as an afterthought, and don't overlook those Los Angeles Rams. They're going to be pretty darn good. That was kind of cool from
it's good.
Here. Yeah.
I mean, guys, real quick, I'll be short and sweet about this. If you have 2 eyes and you see how the team is built and how it plays, and then shout out to JB Long, the voice of the Rams, who does all the cool snippets of clips that you hear on the internet, the radio broadcast, obviously. But he had a very good kind of pie chart of NFL team success. It's called the CQI. Do you have a good head coach? That is the C. Do you have a good quarterback? That is the Q. And I, do you get lucky with injury? Meaning a lot of players don't get hurt. You're important players. Do the Rams have a good coach? Yes. Do you have a legit quarterback? Yes. Now we're just banking on injury being on our side, meaning not that many injuries screwing up our season. If all those things happen, this team is Super Bowl caliber, or will be in contention to have a good playoff run if all those things come together. Yes, coaching, and there could be games that happen, all the football nonsense and all the stuff that goes on and all that, luck, bad luck. Okay, that's different. But the CQI is there for us at the moment. And if those things happen, I'm glad Colin Cowherd sees that, and I'm glad Tom Brady sees that as well, because unless you're a Rams hater and you're like, Rams aren't going to be in that bubble. I mean, why can't we be? Should have probably been the NFC Championship game last season if we beat Detroit, right? Packers, is Jordan Love going to play, first half of the 2023 season Jordan Love, or is he going to be, all pro level second half? Who knows? So I think we have a shot just as much as Niners and, anyone else you consider in the NFC. And again, thanks, Mr. Cowherd. Thanks, Mr. Brady. I'm glad you have 2 eyes and a brain.
Yeah. Hey, and I almost forgot to mention, backtracking here a little bit, the Rams Chargers game. I think you mentioned it in passing, Ian, but that game ball situation with McVay and Pleasant, if you haven't seen that, that was pretty special. Aubrey Pleasant giving this little speech, and no game balls, folks. And then here comes McVay. That was pretty sweet. If you haven't seen it, I think it's surely available on the Rams website.
Yeah.
Hey,
and shout out to Coach AB, because that was probably one of the best press conferences that I've seen in a really, really, really long time. Really nicely done. Came across very cerebral, very professional. The humility, just the genuine nature of his presentation, I thought was really, really impressive. And listen, he has worked all facets of the game, right? And that's McVay's point when he was talking about Coach AB. He said this guy, he's worked every part of the game at this point. What is left for him to do, right? And that's really important because we've been talking about succession planning. McVay has been talking about it, right? His love for the game is there again, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But for how long, right?
God.
And so, when you have like these type of people in your organization, it's such a great opportunity, right? Because when you start taking a look down the line, they might be in a different scenario, and then you have to lure them back. Because chances are somebody's going to offer this. I mean, think about it. This is Raheem Morris all over again. That's really what this is. This is Raheem Morris's situation all over again. So hopefully the Rams can retain him somewhere in this organization, right? Right? Because his contributions to the team are just going to be invaluable. And he's such a great presence. The way his demeanor on the sideline was exceptional.
And it takes a very, very special person, and I mean Sean McVay, to step aside and say, hey, you know what? You take the reins for a day. You deserve it. Show the world what you can do. Show everybody, that you can be an NFL head coach. I'll be over here. And there's not a lot of people that can do that. And have any other NFL teams done this?
Not to my knowledge.
Right. And the Rams do it. Last year they had someone calling the offensive plays, defensive plays. Let Aubrey Pleasant be coach for a day. It's pretty cool. And I have a lot of respect for Sean McVay for being willing to do that.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's great culture here, man. Just thank God. What a difference from the St. Louis era to now. I mean, thanks, Coach McVay. You saved this franchise from disaster.
Yeah, and he's walking the walk. It's we, not me.
Right. Thank God.
Hey, so roster talk. A couple of things we haven't talked about. You mentioned, Paul, your biggest area of concern is the defensive line, the interior defensive line depth, and what we're going to do there. With Murchison struggling with an injury, we bring in Watkins, who I think has played well. I think our front three guys are fine. Durden, Watkins, Murchison. Maybe we'll pick up this dude from the Cowboys, Huggins. I hear he might be available.
No, thanks.
Put his locker right next to Garoppolo, right?
Yeah. So speak to that, Paul. How do you see this unfolding? How do the Rams address this?
So, the genesis really of that conversation came from, when watching Bobby Brown in his limited reps, which, in my opinion, were unimpressive to say the least. I mean, he is just, you talk about a wide body. I mean, he takes up the gap just by going in a 3-point stance, right? But just the way he plays is just, it's like you really got to double check. Like, is he out there? It's just, even in preseason, it seems like he's really not turning it up. You really want to see him dominate in practices. You really want to see him stand out. The coaching staff has made it a point to talk about him every chance they get. They talk about him and what the expectations are for him, and rightfully so. You have the conductor on the left, fist factor on the right. You need a presence in the middle, particularly.
I forgot to mention Tyler Davis, so he could be a factor as well.
So my whole opinion is that I think Tyler Davis would be wasted if you just throw him there as a run plugger. He's shown that he's all over the field. He's got that dynamic ability to get after the passer, to get into the backfield. So having said that, that leaves DeJuan Johnson, and now you have Carlos Watkins. So when you take a look at the roster, the Rams have a rock solid roster at every position. The one area that I see, and I'm hoping it doesn't become a glaring issue, is in the middle, right? Championship teams are built in the middle. You start from the middle out, right? And when you can't say that you have a force in the middle on the D-line that at minimum can at least hold down the run, because the Rams spend 2/3 of their time in nickel anyway. Right? Sure. But that 1/3 of the time, you need a player who is going to be able to dominate. That's the key. So that's just something to keep in mind, Ram Nation, moving forward. When we look at the roster and we look at where there are areas of improvement, if I'm the Rams, trading deadline, pick up one of those dynamic players in the middle that can make such a huge difference, right? And I'll give you a great example. What they were talking when they were interviewing 99 Problems, and they asked him about all those years. There was one player that he mentioned by name. Who was it? Kong. He said, when they signed Sue, I knew we were going to have a great season. His face lit up, right? That's exactly what they have to do. The Rams have to be patient, right? There's two ways they can go. Get a nice veteran run stuffer, like Ashawn, right? Or you get a player that can really juice it up in the middle that can do both. Can, make plays in the backfield, can hold down the run, somebody that's a true interior lineman, somebody that, that's going to bring that special sizzle to the middle of that D-line. But the rest of the D-line, I think, is rock solid. It's just that in the middle, particularly, you don't want to expose EJ too. You got Ernest Jones on a knee, right? And you want to keep him healthy. The last thing he needs is guards running downhill on him, So it sort of plays, great D-line make great linebackers. When you keep your linebackers clean, your linebackers are going to make plays. It's that simple.
Yeah,
right?
There's another position group that I was a little confused about. I thought I had it figured out, and that's the edge rushers. We have Young, Brandon Jackson, Jared Verse, Michael Hoyt, and I had penciled in Nick Hampton, and I think I'm not going to change my mind on that. But then I was watching O'Shawn Mathis. To me, had a quiet game, but I don't know what his assignments are. I didn't analyze the film. And then I see that he was one of the highest rated Ram defenders in that game. What's the truth here?
It seems like those two guys will make it, along with obviously Michael Hoyt not playing, and then the two guys in my background, 8 and 0. So Brendan Jackson, the rookie out of Washington State, who is LA area native, Southern California native, he just hasn't been practicing. So that's not good. If you had to choose somebody to not make the team, it would be him at the moment. He'd be the odd man out, right? It's all about who are the best guys playing. And if we haven't even seen you play much, let alone practice, how can you be on this team?
So you think they might put him on IR before the...
Who knows? His injury hasn't been openly shared. It's a soft tissue. McVay's been very vague about it. And he hasn't been practicing for quite some time, it feels like. Now, was he back today? I can't confirm that. Maybe he was back today. And
they said
all that.
He's going to be back at practice.
Well, very good. He needs to, because he needs to show up. Because if he doesn't look anything ready to go, then O'Shawn and everyone else who's been playing out there and doing good things, they're going to get those final two spots, I think, Mark and Paul.
Yeah, maybe it's just a case of O'Shawn playing well, but not really necessarily jumping off the screen while you're watching.
That's exactly it. There was one play, O'Shawn Mathis came up to support the run, and I forgot who it was. Somebody came to block him, and it was like a tight end or someone like that. And O'Shawn Mathis bench pressed him and walked him back about 15 yards. And I'm like, there you go. Let's see you do that about 5 or 6 times a game, right?
Yeah.
But, those are the flashes that you see from him, right? But the ability to put it all together for, a cohesive block of time is the issue. Yeah. Now, your boy Hampton has been playing upfield. Every time he's been out there, he's been in the backfield. He's been sniffing around the quarterback.
Well, as I said on the pod a couple of days ago, Chris Shula referred to him as a silent assassin.
Exactly right.
And if your DC is calling you his silent assassin, I think he has a roster spot. But maybe I'm reading too much into that.
No, real quick, gentlemen, to that point, and everyone listening in, if head coach is talking about you nicely, if coordinators are talking about you nicely, or other players are saying nice things, you're probably going to make the team. That's just a reality. And anyone who's ever had nice things said about them, whether it's been asked about or they just kind of say it out of the blue without being asked by reporters, you're going to make the squad, man. Not the typical, he's progressing, right? Not always progressing and all that. If they're just giving you nicknames, if they're saying great things without, about you, you're going to be on the team. So
yeah,
you'll be on the team.
But just doing the math, if O'Shawn Mathis and Nick Hampton are both on this 53-man roster, either Michael Hoyt isn't an outside linebacker or
He
Brennan
is.
Jackson's going on IR,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I would.
If Brennan Jackson's healthy, he's making this team. He's got the size.
The
That was his issue in
numbers.
Washington. That was his issue in Washington State too. He had a rash of injuries over his career. So,
Probably
hopefully
because it's just maybe it's because plays so darn
his
physical.
style of play, right? Absolutely. But yeah, so I mean that's a nice group there. I think that 5, right? Monster, Zero, Bars, Hollywood Hoyt, right? Action Jackson, and you got Hampton. I mean, that's a solid 5 that they can get it done.
Maybe we should write a letter to the commissioner asking them if we can just carry 57 this year, just this one year. Make things a lot easier.
The NFL doesn't listen to the players or the union, so I don't know if we're going to have any say.
Just our Rams. I don't care about the other teams.
I know.
Just the Rams.
Oh, my point is, are they going to be listening to that, who they're partners with? Forget it.
And Zach Van Valkenburg's also had a great
yeah.
It's going to be tough, man.
I mean, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent here. Practice squad is going to be. Listen, football is a game of attrition, so you need that depth. So when we have these conversations, it's a positive, right? Because this is a sport of attrition. These players are going to come into play. Your 7th linebacker is going to come into play, right? All these positions that we're talking about, we've been talking about the X factor since the beginning of preseason, right? Xavier Smith, the kid's always open. The kid's doing all the right things. He's always in the right place. When is the last time you've heard his name called for like a mental mistake out there?
Yeah, when was the last time the Rams returned to kick 34 yards?
Right. And then you saw the JJ Lapp. JJ Lapp has impressed. That's a nice insurance policy to have on your practice squad. And he is from Stony
he's
Brook,
a Long Island guy.
Stony Brook, Long Island. You got to root for. But listen, the kid can play. The bottom line is the kid can play. We see that now, right? We see he can block. He's got the size. He runs great routes. The kid's got great hands, and he's got wheels. So to have that kid on your practice squad, and he fits this wide receiver role. That's the thing, right? So that's the other thing. He fits what they do. So he's going to have success here. So this is what we're talking about. The depth factor is definitely going to be a factor for the Rams going into the season.
Yeah, and outside linebackers, we didn't mention Keir Thomas. I think we mentioned everybody except Keir Thomas, and he can play too. He looks really big to me.
And he's wearing like 96. He looks like a
maybe that's why he looks big.
Yeah.
But another Florida State guy. Hey, any last words, guys? I think we've covered everything we planned on covering here.
Yeah, I think so too. But let's get the season started. But until then, we got another joint practice against the Houston Texans in a couple of days. I want to say on Thursday. So I'll be heavily tuned in to all reports and all things going on during that joint practice. You should be too, Rams Nation. Way more valuable information in that than a preseason game week 3 is ever going to be. So that's big news. And then we'll see who stands out and who does not in the actual preseason game in Houston when that occurs. And we'll see if we see anything better from Stetson. We see anything better from any of the linemen. Maybe that's standing out more. We'll see if the defense can continue to put out good tape as a whole. See if Omar Speights can continue to just light it up, right? All those things. But joint practice on Thursday, that's what I'm tuned into, going to be locked into. You should be too. And man, oh man, I'm ready for football.
Yeah, you talk about a great roster. That's Mark's pick, the Texans, that offensive roster. They got 3 legit wide receivers now for CJ.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
And then, Robert Woods, that's your 4th man. It's good. That's a good room right there, man. Right?
Yeah.
So,
hey, a few programming notes. Hey, number 1, Paul, make sure you check out my most recent Ram Fan Rap session. I interviewed a neighbor of yours from New York, and he was really good. I'm going to do a quick reaction to the Rams-Texans game. I know, Ian, your weekends don't work for you. Paul, if you think you're available, I'll send you an invite. I'll give you a heads up. We'll do that, within an hour or two of the game. And I'm thinking maybe, so the roster cuts are Tuesday.
Yeah.
I don't know what time, so we can plan. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I think by the time we get together, this later hour of the day on a Tuesday night, we'll know everything that's been going on with the cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know what we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot, man. Good discussion. And don't forget to subscribe and like these videos. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Out here. Thanks a lot, guys.
Ramley forever.
Ramley forever. And everyone, stay healthy, please.
All right. Thanks, guys. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Our handle is at laramsup.com. Till next time, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.